Michelle Wentz with BuildingPoint Pacific. Thank you all for joining us this morning. We're going to go ahead and get started. And just a few housekeeping items. We are going to go ahead and be recording this presentation today, and we'll be sending this out for everyone that is able to join us to share, as well as anyone that wasn't able to join. In addition to that, everyone is muted, and just if you have questions, you can go ahead and type them into the chat, either public chat or to the presenters in private. And we expect this webinar to last just under an hour, and we'll try and address questions at the end. If we are not able to address any questions, then we'll go ahead and follow up with you via email. Your presenters today are myself, Rochelle Wentz, Senior Account Representative with BuildingPoint Pacific, and Robert Ford with Trimble.
So thanks for joining, guys. Rochelle's going to kick it off by talking for a little bit, and then I'll come back on later and we're going to talk about cameras. So Rochelle, would you please take it away?
Sure will. Thank you, Robert. Just to give a little background about myself, I've been in the construction industry for the past 20 years. I started working with an online safety training company focused in construction. I spent the last decade selling and supporting Trimble solutions, and I support CrewSight, our job site access control solution, and site monitoring with cameras, as well as project controls here at BuildingPoint. Just to give a little bit, we're going to start with a little bit of a snapshot of Trimble. And Trimble was founded, for those of you that need a little more detail, was founded in 1978, and since then has been transforming the way the world works by connecting contractors to owners, connecting the field to the office, and connecting the physical world to the digital. Trimble's investments in our products and services are a clear reflection of this strategy. Our diverse base of clients that have adapted these solutions in many countries are indicative of the value that Trimble can deliver. Unlike other vendors who are software or hardware only, Trimble integrates hardware and software technology that delivers the right data at the right time for confident data-delivered decisions. BuildingPoint Pacific, which is whom I work for, is a Trimble authorized distributor. There are building points across the world that sell and support Trimble solutions, each with their own territory. Our territory that we support here at BuildingPoint Pacific is California, Hawaii, Oregon, and Washington. And we have offices in Northern and Southern California, as well as in Oregon. I sit in sunny San Diego, which sunny again today, and at BuildingPoint Pacific, we support our solutions that are so from office to the field, once again, to help the industry professionals do their job more efficiently. So from access control to site security, video monitoring, Trimble has you covered. The Trimble Automated Job Site, the most complete source secure access system in the construction industry. If we take a look at what was presented on the screen, these individual components automate and drive compliance, safety, and security on the job site. And they're all part of the portfolio of solutions that we have here at Trimble. So let's take a deeper look at how Trimble is connecting you from the office, no matter where it is these days, and out to the job site. So CrewSight, what is CrewSight? Let's start by taking a look at CrewSight. It's a job site access control solution. CrewSight software combines your job site access control system with your worker database for increased control and site security. Use a unified cloud-based portal to remotely control access to all job sites. So CrewSight can be tied to a secure access portal like a turnstile or a security guard's handheld device to enforce access rules to your job site and alert you to unauthorized entries. You're able to gain visibility into job site entries and exits when they occur in real time. You're able to customize entry criteria like non-disclosure agreements, whether or not you've passed drug tests or background screens, and whether you have current licenses or training for your workers. You're able to automate compliance For example, turnstiles won't open if mandatory documents are out of date or a worker has been denied permissions. And you're able to automate capture of worker time and attendance metrics. There's also a mobile application to support being able to take CrewSight from the office out into the field. And we're using RFID technology or Bluetooth or both. So how can you be at the site without being at the site? More recently, our industry has been tasked with being on the job site without being at the job site. And we don't know how long this is going to last. But before our current situation, we still had owners, contractors that needed to view information on a job site. And so remote monitoring is nothing new. But with CrewSight, you can know who's on the job site in real time. You're providing worker hours and volumes of workers through the dashboard. You can add question checks for every worker in response to these changing conditions. You can communicate with workers remotely using broadcast text communication and text alerts. And you can secure the job site from non-authorized workers and receive notifications of intrusion. And when you're on the job site, you can maintain distance by using contactless devices to monitor access. So we have those handheld devices for 6-foot reading of badges. When we take a look at the real-time data and reporting, and you're going to get ground truth information. So how do we do that? Through the dashboard of the CrewSight database, you're able to see a snapshot of who is on site at any given time. This allows the contractor to see who's on site and if they have the right mix of workers. You can make actions and decisions quickly when needs based on real-time information. So you no longer have to wait to find out if you don't have what you need or if the promised number of workers are on site. If your job site is clear, you can view all of that using the remote reporting information. So you can, in addition to that, you can sort your job site by company or trade. You can drill down as needed and then access and retrieve historical information. So real-time data and then the reporting can provide you that information about who was on site on a particular date and time and how long were they on the project. When we want to take a look at enhanced worker checks, maybe adding additional questions to workers on site, for when workers come on site, we can set up within the system to check for workers whether or not they have their orientation completed, their work permits in date, their OSHA training, drug and background screening. We tie this information to a worker's badge. And when the badge is presented at the turnstile, they're granted access into the job site. At that point, they also does a timestamp on in the database of when that worker enters in the job site. When the worker leaves the job site and their badge is scanned, that information is also stamped as their time out or their exit event. If any of the information is out of date or they're not in compliance, they will not be permitted to enter into the job site. When we take a look at how we can communicate remotely with our job site, within CrewSight, you're able to subscribe to site alerts. You can get notifications if individuals are trying to access the job site that don't have the right credentials, maybe their badge is disabled. You can also set up automatic updates on the health and status of your devices, and you can send broadcast text alerts to the whole site, to companies, individuals, or you can also send it to any user-defined fields that you're able to easily set up within the system. Another important factor in managing our job sites is safety. So as you might suspect, one of the key elements is this: how do we really manage safety on our job site, but also keep that with maximizing productivity and providing a safe job site for everyone at the job site. Over the years, we've seen many examples of worldwide of contractors tipping the scales maybe too far towards productivity and away from safety. CrewSight assists you in having the visibility of knowing who's on your job site, allowing you to make sure you know in the case of emergency who's there, when they've exited the job site, using CrewSight also for broadcast messaging to send out to workers or maybe to designated safety professionals. And also, when you're looking at their badges or able to scan their badges, you can pull up emergency contact information, for example, stored within the database. So the safety concept within CrewSight is very prevalent as we once again keep that balance between safety and productivity on our job sites. In looking at how we can maintain a safe job site, we also consider how do we do this with security? How do we keep non-authorized people out of the site and detect those people that might be intrusion into our job site? So one way is using the Trimble ruggedized turnstiles. They communicate using those badges to be able to identify which workers have access onto the project. Once the badge is scanned and the worker has authorized access, the turnstile will open and the timestamp will occur for them to enter into the job site. A perimeter fence around your job site connected to these turnstiles secures your site. And then you can also, in the case of, for example, vehicle access gates, or maybe some gates where you don't have turnstiles present, we have the contactless handheld devices that allow a 6-foot scan range of badges when operated with a security guard. So working in conjunction with the turnstiles, you have enhanced security on your project. So overall, the CrewSight process. Today, CrewSight allows general contractors to manage their labor with a streamlined workflow. And it's really a simple 3-step process. First, you're enrolling your workers into the system. And then you're issuing their credentials, a badge or a hard hat beacon. Those are battery operated that can communicate with solar scanners. And then third, you add some infrastructure to identify them onto the job site and monitor labor remotely. Contactless site access and checks using mobile RFID scanners also allow you to keep that 6-foot distance that I mentioned earlier using your handheld devices. So now you're done. The system captures attendance data and you benefit from reports in near real time and notifications and alerts. So you'll note that there is a variety of options for each stage of the workflow. And this demonstrates our ability to be technologically agnostic. We don't care how we identify workers. This can change in the coming years. And really it's the value that we provide. It's upstream and delivered as attendance and compliant data about the labor force. So as I mentioned at the start, this is CrewSight is one solution in the Trimble automated job site. And I'm going to turn it over to Robert Ford now so he can expand upon the enhanced 24/7 security that we offer with our camera systems. Bob?
Great. Thanks, Rochelle. Nice job. I think what I'd like to do is mainly just give a quick overview of my qualifications speaking to you today. Not that it's much, but it's about 38 years in the construction industry, anywhere from managing a service center throughout the world to having an OEM relationships with John Deere, Case, Komatsu, and some of those other large manufacturers in the machine control arena. And then before getting into the cameras and CrewSight, was selling robotic total stations. So that's one thing I can honestly say from the perspective of Trimble, and just to assure you that certainly Rochelle is the one that you'll talk to on a daily basis if you decide to go with cameras or with CrewSight, but also the depth and breadth of Trimble. I have to be very proud to say that Trimble has not laid off a single individual during this whole crisis. We are committed to our employees. We're committed to our contractors. And by not only being able to support transportation, support agriculture, civil, surveying, and also the construction industry, we've been able to stay open and maintain our relationships with our customers. So I wanted to make that sure as a number one priority, that you know that we are here for the long haul. So that being said, let's talk about cameras. Cameras, in my mind, when I look at it, the thought process comes into 4 or 5 different things. Number one is site security. Definitely, we want to being able to see what's there, and especially with job sites being mothballed in some instances. There are some sites that I go to or have relationships with that have 1,500 people that typically are in there, large data centers, where now they're in shifts of three shifts of 50 each. So definitely the numbers are down, although we can tell who's on there. Certainly with our CrewSight, we don't have a wherewithal to see the feet on the streets really per se. That's where cameras can really play an important part. Also, the risk management when they are running is who's doing what. And we'll talk about that a little bit as well. And then the last thing is, if you have all this data, why not utilize it for future reference to win jobs? And we'll talk about that others. Notice on the bottom here, I will have little notes of information. Theft equals lost productivity, delay, and increased insurance. That's just a known, right? We all understand that. We appreciate it. Again, I want to talk about cameras in the relationship of it's just not a camera. It's just not, we have a partnership with Sensera, and that's a strong relationship. And the relationship is so strong, and why Trimble chose them is a number of 6 individual elements that made us gravitate towards them. And I think when I look at it, when I used to sell scanning and robotic total stations, you can get into a boardroom and you all can sit there and everybody can close their eyes and say, what's on the wall? And everybody knows is drywall. Well, if you talk to a contractor who says, what's on the wall, what's in the wall, we all can say, hey, listen, I see studs, I see electrical, I see plumbing, I see data lines, I see all that. When I close my eyes and think about cameras, and I think about where cameras are utilized in the first phases, I think of civil. And when I close my eyes, I go back to my old machine control days, where that's really where the process starts, right? We have to strip that land. We have to put in pipe. We have to put in electrical. We have to do all that. And why not start cameras at the very first? And when I close my eyes, the other thing I think about is no power and no internet. And those are the 2 things that you used to need with cameras. So by using our cameras, we have that solar capability. So probably about 85% of our total cameras are sold with solar. And that's a good point, right? So the wireless, how do you get that information? So wireless, every camera has a SIMS card. And that SIMS card goes up just like your cellular phones, grabs that data and throws it up. The other thing that I always run into when I'm trying to deploy or when I'm talking to people about cameras is IT departments. My son runs an IT department. I love him, but sometimes he's got that block on getting stuff done. So by being able to go wireless and also with no power needed, I eliminate that. And by eliminating those 2 elements, it makes it portable. So when I start out on a construction site, I may be sitting it with a pole and I mount it on the pole, the camera and the solar. But as things move, I might want to move that camera around. Very easy to move down. It's just like a flagpole. I've got it up there. I bring it down. I lift it up. I put another sleeve in. I slip the pole in and raise it back up again. Very easy. So that makes it affordable. And I'll have to say that the majority of the cameras that we sell, it's kind of it's a two worlds, right? One is you buy the camera, and 2 is you buy a data plan. So what general contractors have been doing is they're actually buying the cameras and then actually having the client or the owner pay for the services. So at the end of the project, you pick it up, you own the cameras, and you take it to the next project. Do that same thing. It's kind of it's a relationship for both. I mean, the cameras are great because it stops a lot of things from happening. And the beauty is that you can help mitigate some of those risks, and the owner appreciates that and realizes that. So again, back to solar, and it's on for 24. So my point down at the bottom, significant increase in theft this year on construction site. And I think we all know why. It's just nobody's there, right? So by being able to utilize cameras, we can certainly mitigate that as well. This gives you a snapshot of what cameras and how we put everything together. The first is the cameras, of course, on the top left-hand side. The other thing that's kind of important is talking about mobile phones. I'm going to skip that. We'll pick that up on the next slides. And then aerial photographs. That's always a good one. So whether you want to do it once a week, once a month, once a quarter, or not do it at all, that's not that's something that you can talk to Rochelle about, and we can schedule it and give you pricing for that. So all that data is housed out in the cloud. So that's our center picture. So we get a chance to analyze it. We send out alerts. So an alert may be, hey, listen, somebody's there after dark, and we just picked it up. Or maybe it's alert, what we would call a restricted safety zone. So that can be picked up as well. So I throw over to the other side, and then what are we trying to do with the software? We're definitely trying to being able to look at things that are happening, real life. So we can look at site security, we can do collaboration. And again, going back to that winning work, now I have all this data, why not utilize it to help sell additional projects? So maybe you take that hospital, that addition that you did, and you had the very first part when the civil side was there, and you progress all the way through the finish. You talk about the timeline that you were able to hold by being able to be right on time. We knew how many workers were going to be on site, which is by CrewSight. We know the workers were there. You know, there were enough from Faith Electronic or whatever it is that were on site. And I was able to see that in real time. So if they said, hey, listen, I wanted to send 50 people, and at 6 o'clock there's only 40, I have that immediate gratification. I can look at that and say, hey, listen, call Faith, I need another 10 people. So that kind of gives you the breadth of the CrewSight, and then also the visual as well. And then worker safety, productivity, and progress is my point on the bottom. When we get into live streaming and intrusion detection, so let's talk about it, and then I'll just show you a quick video where that audio speaker is. Definitely what we want to do is look at a couple different things. One is we want to look at the amount of time that people are there. So if people come in at 6 a.m. and they leave at 6 p.m., what I might want to do is just take a streaming video of wherever that camera is located. And I want to do that just so I can pick up, so I know what's happening throughout the day. Great thing to do, right? Everybody goes, well, what about the data? Is that data plan just streaming all the time? What's unique about these cameras, again, going back to why we chose Sensera, is I can take a video 12 hours long every day for a month and a half before I fill up my data plan, or before I fill up my card that's actually on embedded in the phone. So what does that do? So it gives you a snapshot of what's happening. It's not going to stream it and put it up into the cloud, because that would control the data amount, but it'll give you snapshots of it. So if I say, hey, listen, March 23rd, I had an event and I wanted to go back and look at that. Now I'll take it off of that stream, put it off the stream and put it up into the cloud. So it gives you that capability to do that. The other thing that it does, because that's camera in daylight, now I have a chance to do, and I'm going to go ahead and play this video a second while I talk. It gives you a chance to see what's happening out on the site, even in dark. So we see an intrusion. Somebody had breached the area. They're walking through it. And I can set that up two ways. I can either set that up as an alert that gets to the superintendent or the owner, or I can actually just record that data. In our instance, the first time I started playing with cameras, it was kind of funny because we had a new addition in Boulder, Colorado. And I looked at it. There was two events that happened that night. The first one I picked, it was kind of boring. It showed people coming into the site behind a piece of plastic. It was an indoor camera, and it was going back and forth. They're going back and forth. I go, well, that's kind of boring. Why am I seeing that? And then I progressed to the next one, and just before I progressed to the next one, I saw somebody walk through and take something, and then I saw them leave. And then the next element that I looked at, or the next event, was two police officers walking in with guns drawn and flashlights, and they had They had seen somebody outside and they went in to go find out what was happening. So it captured that event. Again, it's nothing that is unique to cameras, but it's nice to be able to say that I captured that event. And, if we look at it from the standpoint of stolen goods, most of them, as my little thought down here was, over 60% of stolen goods are never recovered. So an interesting tidbit, we definitely want to stop that by being able to show cameras. And one of the things that, they've talked to criminals, and one of the things they always say, if I go to a construction site and I see cameras being utilized, I pass up that site and go to one that doesn't have cameras. So even the nomenclature on a sign that's outside on the fence stops people from coming in. So it's just knowing that. The other thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is we had talked about cameras and capturing those events. I was at a site 2 months ago, and we were walking through the site. I was with a safety super, and we were going through. And halfway through the process of walking through, just telling what was happening, because they already had CrewSight on the project, he stopped. He says, "Hold on a minute, just stay right here. I'll be right back." And he went over and he saw somebody up on steel that wasn't tied off. He called that individual down and he said, "Listen, you know what's happened. You weren't tied off. You're going to have to go for 2 days. And I'm going to go ahead and release you right now. I'll be back. Go back to the office and I'll be back there in a minute." So what he did is he turned, because it was a crew site, he turned off the badge. And when he got back and he started walking, I said, if we had our cameras, which they didn't have at that point, if you would have recorded what was happening with that individual on your phone, you could indeed send that back up to the cloud, up to our cloud, and actually document that event. So if it ever came back that the individual says, "No, I was tied off, you just didn't see me," he would have that event logged and it would be up in the cloud. So that's an important thing that I wanted to mention that I think is important. Again, my little tidbit here is 50% of all stolen goods are taken after hours. So that brings up a good point. Cameras are important in the daytime, because that must be that 60% of them are happening during the day and 40% at night. My father always used to say, this is dating me now, my father always used to say, "Nothing happens good after midnight." And I have to, I tell that to my kids as well. So, and pretty soon grandkids. So here's kind of giving you the software side of things. What are we doing? The picture at the far left actually is, I don't know if you can see that in there, but it says live streaming. So we have that as a possibility, and we utilize that kind of at the verbiage says over on the left-hand side, owner and public URL sharing. So as maybe it's a public, maybe it's a museum, maybe it's the Kennedy Center that just got funding and it's going to have some addition work on it. And you might want to say, "Hey, you know what? I want everybody as a contractor," or maybe it is a requirement to show what's going on that site. You can publish that URL and people can log in and see it. They can't necessarily do anything with the data. It's live streaming and they can just see what's happening. As opposed to the picture on the left, which gives you 4 views. So it isn't dedicated towards the software just to watch one event at a time. I could have 4, I could have 10, I could have 20 cameras streaming in, and then I choose which one I want to look at. So that's depicting that. The picture on the bottom, the middle left, gives you a snapshot of what you're looking at if I had the software open. It's showing you all the events that's happened on the right-hand side. Maybe it's to do a time lapse, and the time lapse may be set off to do it once an hour, once a day, once a quarter, whatever you choose. And that's the beauty of having this software as cloud-based, because you make those choices of what you want. And if things change and you go, "Hey, you know what? I really want to take more photos, I want to do more streaming," you get a chance to make those changes on the fly. The one on the right, which has 2 green borders on it, is depicting our restricted safety zones. So, we used it, and I showed the video that shows capture of somebody breaching a construction site. We can actually make zones and actually call them safety zones. So in this case, when that crane moves, maybe because it's a little bit on the right-hand side and one on the left. So I don't want anybody walking that area. So if Bob Ford walks up and he goes to check on CrewSight, and he goes from one edge of the project to the other to go see one of the other turnstiles on the other side. And dummy me walks right in that green, which is restricted safety zone, and it's not stripped out with tape or anything. It's just the superintendent doesn't want anybody in that area. He can get an alert that, not that I went in, but somebody went through, and he can call the crane guy and say, hey, listen, there's somebody in back of you. Stop what you're doing. Don't go there. A great tool that's being able to be utilized in the daylight as well as night vision. And then, of course, the one that's really nice is the weather. So whenever a picture is taken, it captures the data, meaning the weather. It's at the point of camera. So when it takes that shot, it picks up the weather, it picks up how much rain's happened today, what the temperature is, what the cloud cover is, and why is that important? Because if I'm going to do a daily work journal, I want that to be populated. And some of the best flavors for software integration for daily project can be actually shot over to that daily work journal. So that'll be embedded as that comes over. Case in point, this one site I was at a few months, well, probably 3 months ago now. I went there, we actually deployed CrewSight. And a week later, I was back in my office and I said, hey, you know what? Which I typically do is I look at those sites to make sure everything's running okay. Well, I happened to look at the site, and at 6:20, I saw that there was 300 people on site, bringing up to their total. I think their total was 1,500 a day on that project. So as it started to ramp up, and then all of a sudden, I saw everybody leaving. And I go, what's happening? And there wasn't, that big influx wasn't there. So if I would have had a camera, I could have been able to open that camera and look at the data and see what the weather was. So it never got there. Pretty soon it went down to 60 people. So if I had a camera, I could have seen what was happening there. Again, that's a nice little feature to be able to see that. And then construction equipment costs $300 million to $1 billion. Why is that such a big discrepancy in numbers? I think that's, at least from the data that I picked up, is, we got the cost of a stolen good, but we don't have cost of lost work. We don't have cost to buy the new product and to get the training back on the product, or that product may not be in stock. So there's a lot of things that boil into that, getting up to that $1 billion mark. This shows you just what we do on a typical quotation that we work with you on. We definitely ask for a site plan, which is up on the right-hand side. And then we use Google Earth or Google Map to bring down a satellite view of the project that we're going to use cameras on, or that you've asked us to look at. And the one on the bottom right shows you a view of a single camera in there and showing you what kind of range. You see the orange there actually depicts how much range that camera has. And if you notice the road, if you look at the road that goes all the way down through it, what their thought process is they wanted the activation of restricted safety zone or IR at night is to monitor that road. So if people came in, because it is on along a street and it's on the backside of a building, if people get around there, dash around there, they really have open territory to grab anything they want. So they want to definitely know what's happening when they breach that road. So that's a typical camera. And also here, lost time to file police reports and insurance claims. That boils back into that 300 to $1 billion. These are some of the cameras that, some of the companies that have bought cameras. We have thousands of them out there, or Sensera has thousands of them out there. We are the streets. We are the boots to the streets for them. And if I might just end with talking about threats of theft, one thing I want to make sure that, and I'm sure you all know it, right, is keep the area lit at night. That definitely is going to deter criminals. Install cameras or an alarm. Invest in a virtual guard. Let's go back to what Rochelle mentioned. Just because we have turnstiles and we have handheld devices, we also have the capability of doing door locks or chain link rents. I had somebody call this last week and asked me to use CrewSight to automate a chain link door. So what we did is we put in a magnetic holding apparatus, which would hold like 1,000 pounds. So actually you're gonna have to smash the whole thing down before they get that broken. So it's a card. They walk up with their access card, touch it, it opens that magnet, you get in there and get it closed. And the other thing that's really kind of it's in your mind, just think about it. It's pretty simple, right? If you have a shipping container, why not put your tools in there, especially if you're in shelter for a month or so? You want to make sure that everything is off and away from people being able to visually see it. What they can't see, they're not going to go after. What they can see, they certainly will. And that definitely keeps intruders out. So once those turnstiles are on there, nobody can get into that site if it's completely fenced off unless they have that turnstile, have that card. So that brings us to the end of the presentation. We are really early, so that's good.
Well, Bob, thank you very, very much. There were a few questions that came in, and one of them was we talked about owning the cameras, and it was asked as with the camera equipment. And you had mentioned that the contractor is purchasing the cameras, and then the owner of the project is paying for the data plan. And they asked us, is the same with CrewSight? So I just wanted to address that. So the answer is yes. When you purchase and you own the equipment, so the handheld devices, the printer, the camera, for the badging and taking photos, as well as the turnstiles, those are all purchased. And you can utilize that equipment on future projects. So when the next project comes up, you move the equipment over to the next project. You establish a new subscription for CrewSight for that project with Trimble, and then you're able to begin utilizing that equipment again. Another question came up asking if you can move the cameras during the project as work progresses.
Yep, and I can answer that. Yes, you can. So there's many different ways that we can attach them. In my scenario where I had everybody close their eyes and think about a civil, there's no buildings around typically, and a big site, there's no buildings around yet. So we have sleeves that we put into the ground, and then these poles actually slide into it, and it's just like a flagpole. You put the camera on there and raise it up 20 feet. There comes with brackets, so you can put them on a wall, you can put them on a pole, like a lamp pole if you want to do that. You can really put them wherever you want. So yes, they are movable, and the reason they are is because it's solar and because I have that data plan. I have no cable, no IT department, and no power requirements. It's just considering it a portable and movable object. I guess I might say that, we had talked about the system being utilized in our Boulder office, and that was a camera that's indoor. And you can buy cameras that plug in. You don't have to always go with solar. I always say, hey, listen, let's do your solar, because you don't know where it's going to go the next time. You have the solar panel there. You don't necessarily have to use it. You just plug it in if you're indoors. But when you go outside, you've got it. It all fits in if you buy a case, it all fits in a nice little case. You put it in there and deploy it to the next.
Okay, great. And then also in regards to the turnstiles on a project, those are movable. You can pick those up and move those, relocate those as work progresses in your job site layout and perimeter changes. Those are movable with the forklift, and they have a cell data kit that can be connected as well, and you're just plugging in power. So it's just connecting back up the power, and you can move those as the site progresses. Another question came up in regards to how do they know, our customers that we're looking at, what kind of camera to use? Because you covered quite a bit of different ones. So how do they figure out what kind of camera to use?
Well, basically, we talk to the customer, find out what their requirements are, and that's where that site plan comes into play. Mm-hmm. So if I see that site plan and we talk about what things are unique to your jobs, maybe it's detection, and maybe it's detection on the northeast side, and maybe it's detection on the northwest side. So in there, we start to build after we have a number of questions that we ask you, and then we start to build it. And then from there, we come up and we come back and say, these are the cameras, and this is why we chose them. We like to go back and reiterate that again. We go over the site again. We go through the requirements of the cameras and why we chose them, and then you agree on it. Once you agree on it, then we decide we can give you a quote, and then we send it to you. So yeah, it's not a one-way street. It's both ways, because the best case scenario of what I think, and what you guys think are totally different sometimes. So even though we have those unique tools that we use to show where a camera is utilized and where's the best positioning, sometimes that's different. So yes, it's a community effort.
And I'll add to that as well, and working with CrewSight and determining turnstiles, whether you need a dual lane or a single lane, and where we're going to put the handheld devices, and walking through the process. We're here, we're experts in the industry when it comes to these solutions, and we can use our experience from past projects in similar instances, or maybe you have some unique need at a project that we can help work with you on. So we're here to work with you to help with that configuration and deployment of the solutions post-purchase, as well as support. Well, I wanted to thank everyone for joining us today. You can find out more information at buildings.trimble.com, field-technologies/labor management. Our contact information is on the screen as well. So thank you for joining us and learn more about Trimble job site security solutions and really comprehensive real-time job site monitoring with the solutions presented by Trimble and BuildingPoint Pacific. I want to thank you all for joining us today and hope you have a safe and productive remainder of the week.